Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to tonight's qualifying preview for, of course, qualifying day tomorrow at the 2022 Italian Grand Prix at Monza. I hope you're all doing well ahead of what is going to be, unfortunately, as I'll get onto in a few minutes' time, kind of like Spa, or pretty much like Spa, a bit of an underwhelming or anticlimactic qualifying session we're going to have tomorrow. I still think it'll be exciting to a certain extent, but yeah, it's definitely been or going to be affected by the penalty situation, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, can't wait for qualifying still. Normally we do get exciting qualifying sessions here at Monza, so I don't see why we can't have, any proper excitement tomorrow at Monza. And what we're going to be doing tonight is what we do usually, is we're going to go through the teams, look at how they did today, and I'll give my best prediction as to how I think they'll do tomorrow based off of how I think they'll really perform in qualifying, and again, kind of based off what we saw in practice today. We'll also get into data from practice too. We'll get into looking at an onboard lap of the track to look at, what you need to do to have a good lap at the Monza Circuit, and we'll also get into some stats regarding some certain teams and some news regarding the possible Red Bull Porsche deal that was rumored to be happening for 2026. We'll get onto that later on. So yeah, that's what we're going to be getting into in this stream tonight. I just want to say quickly though, because obviously I did my preview last night for the weekend. I just want to say apologies for the preview being not quite what it normally is, and I was kind of rushing through it. The reason is because obviously of the news that broke during my stream of the Queen's death. So because of that, I just thought there was no real point, sticking around for too long, which is why I kind of raced through the rest of the team. So this will be a bit more of an in-depth preview than what I did last night. But yeah, just apologies about that if you were disappointed, I guess you could say, with the how I did the preview last night. But it was, I guess you could say, exceptional circumstances in regards to what happened this time yesterday. But hopefully all you guys are doing well, no matter what time it is in your part of the world, no matter where you're from. Hopefully you are having a good day, and no matter the circumstances as well, I hope you're all doing as well as you can be. But before getting into the teams, let's get into the results of the two practice sessions today at Monza. It's been a sunny day, not the absolute hottest day you could probably get at Monza around this time of year, but it has been a decent day weather-wise when it was predicted to be quite stormy, but in the end, didn't turn out to be that bad. So practice one, it was a Ferrari 1-2. Charles Leclerc quickest from Carlos Sainz in second. George Russell ended up third, with Lewis Hamilton in fourth. Max Verstappen was fifth. The only reason Verstappen was fifth was because he's blocked so heavily by Lando Norris on his quickest lap in practice one, which is why Verstappen ended up in P5. And then the rest of the top 10, it is, or was, Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda, Valtteri Bottas, and Daniel Ricciardo. And then Alex Albon, Zhou Guanyu, Pierre Gasly, Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll, Lando Norris, Kevin Magnussen, Antonio Giovinazzi, Nick De Vries, and Nicholas Latifi completing the rest of the field. For practice one, obviously Giovinazzi and De Vries, respectively, in the Haas and Aston Martin cars, are Friday practice drivers, and that's why they did the first practice session for those teams. And then we'll get into the results of practice two. Ferrari still ended up on top. Carlos Sainz quickest by 1.5 tenths from Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc third. Lando Norris, I have to say, very impressively up in fourth place. George Russell ended up fifth, with Perez sixth, Hamilton seventh, and then Ocon, Alonso, and Albon completing the rest of the top 10. Albon very quick so far this weekend. Not really a surprise because the Williams is very quick at this track because it is the quickest car in a straight line, and obviously Albon driving very well in that Williams. And then the rest of the field, it's Ricciardo, Zhou, Bottas, Gasly, Tsunoda, Magnussen, Vettel, Stroll, Latifi, and Schumacher. So that is your order for practice two. And looking, at the very front of the field, I still think Red Bull have the absolute best car. We know Red Bull do tend to sandbag a bit on a Friday, so I don't think we can read massively into the results of practice 2 in terms of Ferrari topping the session. In regards to the midfield, though, McLaren definitely a bit quicker than I expected. They do tend to drop back kind of by a few tenths compared to the top teams on a Saturday, in qualifying when it really matters, though. So I don't think they'll be, with Lando Norris up in 4th place tomorrow. That would be quite incredible for them. But yeah, they're a bit quicker than I expected. Alpine are about where I thought they'd be. Albon, kind of, just about, or slightly quicker, I guess you could say, than I was expecting. But I did think he'd be impressive this weekend. Alfa Romeo also a bit quicker than I was expecting for this Grand Prix. And then AlphaTauri and Aston Martin, so far this weekend, haven't really been that great. Practice 2, AlphaTauri were 14th and 15th, and then Aston Martin 17th and 18th. I didn't think Aston Martin in qualifying trim would be that good at this track because they still lack quite a bit of straight line speed compared to some of their midfield rivals, such as, say, Alpine, AlphaTauri, and Haas. But I didn't expect it to be that poor. So, yeah, not great there for Aston Martin. But one thing I am going to do before we get, properly into the teams and the stream itself, what I'm going to do is I am going to go to a tweet quickly. Let me just find it from Chris Medland. Because I want to, before we get into the teams, I want to quickly just show on screen who has a grid penalty for this weekend's Italian Grand Prix. So let me just get it up on screen in a sec, and then you guys will be able to know going into the rest of the weekend. So, let me find it. Let me just find the last one he updated. There you go. I'll just show it on screen quick. You can see here, Chris Medland's Twitter. So these are the drivers that will have a grid penalty for the Italian Grand Prix this weekend. So Max Verstappen will have a 5-place penalty. I think because of a new... what was it? I can't remember what it was. But Max Verstappen does have a penalty. I think it's a new... MGU, is it a new MGUH or something? I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but Verstappen, will, I know I think it's a new ICE. I think it might be a new ICE. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. Max Verstappen, has a 5-place penalty. Sergio Perez will have a 10-place penalty. Carlos Sainz, it says 15 places plus 10 for gearbox. So he'll be starting basically at the back of the field. Valtteri Bottas has 15 places. Obviously, he had a power unit problem in the race at Zandvoort, so no wonder he's taking a penalty here. And then Lewis Hamilton and Yuki Tsunoda have back of the grid penalties. Carlos Sainz, though, they've taken on even more power unit parts since this tweet was made during practice 1. Or, this was during practice 1. So Carlos Sainz also now has a back-of-the-grid penalty. So, Verstappen, Perez, Sainz, Bottas, Hamilton, Tsunoda, and maybe Mick Schumacher as well, given what happened in practice too, because he did break down with some sort of issue with his engine, I think. So, maybe he'll be added to this list. But those drivers, they are the ones taking a grid penalty for this weekend. So do remember that when going through or, watching this preview and obviously going through qualifying tomorrow as well. So let's just get straight in to the teams, and we will start with Red Bull Racing. And, surprising that, Verstappen is taking a penalty this weekend as well. I wasn't quite expecting that to happen. I thought Verstappen, with the penalty he took at Spa, I thought that would be basically it, but apparently not. So Verstappen, will be starting 5 places down on the grid. Thing is, though, I think if he outqualifies, I'm trying to just think, if he outqualifies the people that have penalties, it might actually be less than a 5-place penalty, or I thought that's what David Croft said in commentary, but he could be wrong. He normally can be wrong, David Croft, for Sky Sports F1. But to be honest, looking at today and the pace of the Red Bull, if you're a Red Bull fan, don't be concerned at all, even though, you didn't end up quickest in practice 1 or practice 2. Like I said, practice 1, Verstappen was blocked horribly by Norris in the final corner. Really poor from Norris or the team engineer that didn't tell him. I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, very, very poor by what you call it, by Lando Norris there. So Max Verstappen couldn't improve on his lap, and he probably would have gone, maybe not absolute quickest, but he would have been second or third at the absolute worst instead of P5 in the end and 4/10 off the pace. And then practice 2, ended up second, a 10th and a half off Carlos Sainz. Again, though, because we know they do tend to sandbag on a Friday and they do tend to show a lot more pace normally on a Saturday, I think Red Bull are still the clear favourites for pole position. And with the data we'll get into in a moment when it comes to practice 2, I think I can pretty clearly illustrate that Red Bull are holding back on what they truly have for this weekend. So, yeah, looking good for them and for Max Verstappen. For Sergio Perez, typical Friday struggles for him. He's never normally that quick, to be honest, on a Friday. He's normally turns it up and really performs at a decent level still on a Saturday, most times than not. But with his 10th-place penalty, it's not really going to matter qualifying, of course, tomorrow. So I think also today for Perez, it would have been just about finding a good setup for the race. And we know from past here that that Sergio Perez is very good on race day at Monza. He's had plenty of races here where he started low down on the grid and ended up finishing in the points. I think 2019 for Racing Point, he started like 17th or 18th on the grid and he ended up finishing in 7th place and holding off Max Verstappen in the much quicker Red Bull. When he was on the podium here for Sauber 10 years ago, which I've got to say, 10 years ago is amazing to think that he was on the podium here for Sauber, along with, Alonso, who was third, and Hamilton, who won the Grand Prix. But yeah, that weekend, I think he started 14th on the grid and ended up finishing second and could have won the race if there was like 5 more laps, to be honest, Sergio Perez. So don't count out Perez, even though he's got that grid penalty. Do not count him out from having a strong result still on Sunday. But yeah, for Red Bull, they're looking absolutely fine. There's nothing to worry about with them. As long as tomorrow they don't make any mistakes, once they turn their engines up and get on proper low fuel for real, Red Bull will be the quickest team. I have absolutely no doubt about that. But let's get into some stats regarding the Red Bull team going into qualifying, because they are quite interesting despite them being so quick for this Grand Prix, we think, for this weekend. Max Verstappen has never taken pole position at Monza. Of course, he started on pole for the Italian Grand Prix last year, but it was a bit of a unusual situation because we had the Friday normal qualifying on the Friday. Obviously, I just said it. And what was it? Lewis Hamilton got pole. Then Bottas won the sprint race, but then Verstappen ended up starting on pole. But he's never actually qualified in first place, if you know what I mean. Red Bull, their last pole position at Monza was in 2013 with Sebastian Vettel. And Red Bull have taken 40% of the pole positions in 2022. And those pole positions are, again, when they've qualified first in qualifying. Just to clarify what I mean by that. If we look at, say, the normal qualifying session and a non-sprint weekend, Max Verstappen's best qualifying result here is third from last year. So it's not really been historically a great place for him, as I got into last night. Verstappen has never won this race or finished on the podium. So it's not a great place historically for him, but I'm sure that will change this weekend. And we'll go now onto the home team, Ferrari, who have had a decent day. Their pace has been not too bad from them. It's been about as expected, to be honest. They've been quite a bit better, say, than Mercedes and been quite far ahead of them, which is good for them. So they're not, under threat from them in qualifying. Because obviously, with Verstappen taking his penalty, this is an open goal for Ferrari to get pole position with Charles Leclerc. With, Verstappen taking a penalty, Sainz taking a penalty. Well, it's the same team, but let me do that again. Verstappen taking a penalty, Perez taking a penalty, and Hamilton taking a penalty. With those three taking a penalty, that will mean they won't start on pole, obviously. It gives up a great opportunity for Ferrari to get pole position. And I think, even though I don't think they'll qualify or finish in first place in qualifying, I do think Charles Leclerc will start the race on Sunday on pole, because compared to George Russell, the only driver he really needs to worry about Leclerc tomorrow in terms of starting the race on Sunday on pole, I don't think the Mercedes can compete with the Ferrari around this track in qualifying. I think in the race on Sunday, I think there's a good chance that Russell in the Mercedes could still beat the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. I think that's definitely possible. But yeah, I think Leclerc really should be on pole position for the race on Sunday. And then with Carlos Sainz, really, what he needs to do is get through, obviously, to Q3 and then provide a tow to his teammate to try and make sure he's ahead of all the drivers that don't have a grid penalty for this weekend's Italian Grand Prix. But even if Charles Leclerc starts on pole, I still think Max Verstappen, even if Verstappen starts in 6th, which I think is the best position he could possibly start from, I still think Max Verstappen is going to win the race on Sunday. So they just need to, really, tomorrow give themselves the best opportunity to get the win. But I still think it's going to be pretty difficult to get the win for the Ferrari, the home team for this weekend. It's going to be pretty difficult. They're going to have to hope, really, for a bit of luck, and hope, obviously, for Max Verstappen to somehow fail to either finish the race or just have a monumental issue during the Grand Prix itself. But they are definitely, I would say, the second quickest team. I think the slimmer rear wing for them is probably helping them this weekend. They're probably a tad closer to Red Bull than maybe some would have expected with the single lap pace so far, but I still think Red Bull have the ultimate pace over the Ferrari team. But let's get into some stats regarding the Scuderia in qualifying at Monza. So Charles Leclerc does have a pole position from Monza in 2019. It was a bit of an anticlimactic session, that, because we had that farce at the end of qualifying with all the drivers trying to slipstream each other, and then they ended up, They ended up not being able to actually improve their laps, did any of the drivers at the end of that session. But still, it's pole position. Ferrari, though, despite getting a couple, despite getting some race wins at this track since, I think, 2005, they've only started the Italian Grand Prix on pole twice since 2005. And saying that, I've just remembered that stat actually is incorrect, so I'll have to update that for tomorrow. Actually, Ferrari have started this race on pole 3 times. I forgot 2018, where obviously they locked out the front row, so apologies about that. So only 3 times, though, since 2005, they've started on pole position. So even though it's their home Grand Prix, they've not really had great either luck or just pace here at Monza since 2005, when is basically when their absolute dominance came to an end. And Ferrari this season have taken 60% of pole positions in 2022. Yes, the season's been poor for them, but they are still the kings of qualifying in 2022. And with Ferrari this weekend, yeah, they'll be competitive in qualifying, but it'll be probably a different story on Sunday. But now let's move on to the Mercedes team. And it was looking good for them after practice one, because the two Mercedes drivers were about a third of a second off the pace in third and fourth, and it was looking good, for the first session. But then they dropped massively off the pace in practice two and ended up, I think, close to a second or about a second off the pace. So, by the way, hold on. I'm just looking at the chat quickly. Someone asking, 5 places, is that a gearbox? I think it's for something else with Verstappen. I'll quickly have a look. Let me have a look quick. Max Verstappen has... it doesn't actually say what Verstappen has took on. It says Verstappen is taking on a new engine or power unit element, so it doesn't look as though it's a gearbox thing. I think there is one of the power unit elements where, hold on, one Diffel says, first power unit is 10, the next one's only 5. Look at Merc last year. I think they're doing the same. Right, yeah, that's what it is. With Red Bull there. But, with Mercedes, they dropped massively off the pace in practice too. They went from a third of a second off the pace to... just under a second, I think, off the pace of Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. Now, we know Mercedes won't be quite that poor tomorrow, and because of Lewis Hamilton's penalty, Hamilton will be able to provide a tow to George Russell in the Mercedes. So it's not going to be too bad tomorrow, I don't think, but they're looking maybe not as close as they would have expected or hoped coming into Saturday, obviously tomorrow, after the 2 practice sessions today. I'm just quickly reading a quote here from Lewis Hamilton about his day today, and he said, "We have made some setup changes, nothing major, but we went a lot slower somehow, or they went a lot quicker. We were giving everything out there. It just doesn't feel particularly quick." I think it's probably the top 2 teams going a tad quicker, and Mercedes maybe not improving their pace with the setup changes. They were complaining, the 2 drivers, about bouncing, I think, during the session of practice 2. And also Russell in practice 1 was complaining that the car wouldn't slow down enough into turn 1, the first chicane. So, maybe those fixes for Russell that hasn't really improved their pace there. Also, Hamilton has acknowledged that the team had low deployment of the electrical energy from their power unit. George Russell reported erratic development during the second session and believes that Ferrari may have an advantage in this area. So, not a great day for Mercedes. Bit of a stuttery day, I guess you could say, for them, with the that issue, and then the setup issues. The bouncing in the practice 2 session. So, not great from Mercedes there. But like I said, tomorrow they'll be closer. I have no doubt about that. Not massively closer, but I don't think they're going to be like a second or more off the pace. I think that's a bit too... that'd be quite dramatic if it was that far off for them, but I don't think it'll be quite that bad. It'll probably be, I don't know, if Verstappen is finishing in first place, the quickest Mercedes will probably be like, I don't know, 6 or 7 tenths off the pace compared to Verstappen. It won't be as bad as it was today. And I think Mercedes will, despite not having on pace as quick of a car compared to Ferrari and Red Bull around this track, certainly in qualifying trim, I do think that there is still a lot to look forward to for them, because most likely George Russell is going to line up on the front row of the grid. And if Russell was able to get ahead of Leclerc at the start of the race on Sunday, then I think Russell's got a good chance of finishing on the podium. I think he's got a very good chance indeed of finishing on the podium if that does happen. I don't think Mercedes will win the Grand Prix this weekend. It would take Red Bull having an absolute calamity for that to happen. Obviously, we know Ferrari are going to have a calamity. They always do every single Grand Prix weekend. But I don't think Mercedes will be, even though they'll benefit from the penalty situation with Russell lining up probably at worst in second on the grid for Sunday. I don't think they'll benefit to the point of winning the Grand Prix on Sunday. But let's get into some stats regarding the Mercedes team in qualifying here at Monza. And then we are going to get on to some news and also FP2 data, looking at the best sector times for all the teams in each sector and also the ideal lap, and an onboard lap of the Monza Circuit. And I might actually get to another bit of news that I saw on Twitter a few days ago. Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. Let's just go on to this now. Lewis Hamilton has taken pole position 7 times at Monza since 2009. What a record he has here in Italy. And Mercedes have taken pole at Monza 6 times since 2014. So despite obviously this weekend and this year being quite slow, it has been a great place for the Mercedes team. But now let's get into the data from FP2. Credit, by the way, to Lights Out F1 blog. You can go follow him on Twitter or check out his website. But this is the sector by sector rankings for the teams and the ideal lap on the far right-hand side of the screen. So in terms of the fight between Ferrari and Red Bull, and I will get onto Mercedes a bit in a second, but in terms of the, again, Ferrari versus Red Bull fight, the reason I say Red Bull are sandbagging is look at Sector 1. They are a quarter of a second slower in Sector 1. And Sector 1 is, massively flat out, pit straight, very slow chicane, the first chicane, which I think the Ferrari will be doing pretty well in. They have a very good car for the exit of slow corners, do Ferrari. But then a long power section again through Curva Grande up until the second chicane. So it should suit Red Bull, and it will once we get into the proper qualifying running tomorrow. And yeah, Red Bull a quarter of a second off compared to Ferrari. So Red Bull will be quicker than Ferrari in this sector. Another thing I noticed as well, which is great for Red Bull, by the way, and does explain, I think, a tad why they're so quick in Sector 2, or so much quicker in Sector 2 compared to Ferrari and how Ferrari were doing in Sector 1. Red Bull were running, I think, a tad more rear wing this weekend, or so far this weekend in the sessions I saw earlier. So because they have the straight line speed advantage anyway, because of their low drag concept, Red Bull, that's the advantage they have. They can run a bit more downforce like they did at Spa, so that on race day, where I'd say straight line speed is probably less important, because, I mean, you're not really, unless you're having to overtake anyone, you're not really having to run at anywhere close to your maximum power. So I'd say downforce becomes a bit more important in the Grand Prix, especially with looking after tyres. And yeah, I think Red Bull, that's a big benefit for them, and it does kind of explain their pace in Sector 2. And then in Sector 3, Red Bull a tad quicker than Ferrari. But Red Bull definitely are going to be the quickest team, because, yeah, Sector 1, there's no way Red Bull are going to be quarter of a second slower than Ferrari. Absolutely no chance in hell that is going to happen tomorrow. For Mercedes, for them, Sector 1, not really a surprise that they're 2 tenths down compared to Ferrari. I'd say that's pretty much expected for them. Sector 2 and Sector 3, though, definitely a bit puzzling. I'm not going to say they should have been as quick as Red Bull and Ferrari in those sectors, but they shouldn't be a third of a second off, respectively, in each of those sectors. Sector 2 and Sector 3, of course. Sector 2, really, not totally, but it should suit their car enough to the point where they're only maybe a tenth, 2 tenths at the absolute most off Red Bull and Ferrari. 3.5 tenths almost behind Red Bull is a bit excessive, I think, in that sector. And then Sector 3, obviously there is a bit of a long straight in between the exit of the Ascari chicane and the entry to Parabolica, and then obviously the beginning of the long pit straight, right before you come across the line to finish your lap. But there are a couple corners in that final sector, the Ascari chicane and the Parabolica, where the Mercedes should handle pretty well, because we know the Mercedes car in the fast corners is a pretty good car. So yeah, to be losing another third of a second there, a bit surprising. So I reckon there is probably at most a couple tenths of a second for them to find compared to Red Bull, say, and Ferrari, I guess you could say, as well. So, yeah, they're not going to be, as you can see on the far right side of the screen, Mercedes are not going to be on pace with McLaren. They're going to be quicker. Maybe not massively quicker, but they are going to be quicker by at least 2 or 3 tenths of a second. I don't think McLaren are going to be quite that quick in qualifying. So, yeah, Mercedes will be closer. Don't worry, Mercedes fans. They will be closer to Red Bull and Ferrari in qualifying, but they are still certain, I think, to be the third fastest team. And then when it comes to McLaren versus Alpine, obviously we'll get on to how I think they'll do McLaren and Alpine for qualifying tomorrow. But even though McLaren with Norris, and this is really why McLaren was so quick, is because of Lando Norris, because he did all of these, the best sectors for McLaren here. Yeah, McLaren have had a good day today, but I think also Alpine, I think, will have a bit more to show tomorrow, because we know the Alpine in a straight line compared to the McLaren is quite a bit quicker. I think Alpine are another team that don't tend to push that hard on a Friday. So, yeah, I think Alpine will be quite a bit quicker tomorrow. As you can see in Sector 2, where it's, I'd say, mostly about downforce, they're pretty much McLaren and Alpine level on pace. And then Sector 3, level on pace again. So, yeah, I think Alpine will be, at worst, level on pace with the McLaren of Lando Norris, but probably quicker than the McLaren of Lando Norris. So I'd probably say Alpine, 4th quickest team going into qualifying, because they are still close enough, despite running probably less fuel or more fuel, and less power. That's what I was trying to say. I still think they're, close enough to McLaren from what I've seen so far to be probably tomorrow the quicker out of those two teams. So I think it'll be Alpine as the 4th best team, then McLaren 5th. And then after that, Williams looking very good in Sector 1. They, for the ideal lap, are the 6th quickest team, it says, which would be very good if they could do that in qualifying tomorrow. Sector 2, as expected, because they don't have a lot of downforce, they're quite low down. I am a bit surprised that Aston Martin are a 10th of a second slower in Sector 2. Yeah, a bit surprised by that, because normally Aston Martin have quite a bit more downforce than Williams do. And then in Sector 3, Williams going at a respectable speed in Sector 3, but I think they should probably be a 10th or 2 closer to McLaren and Alpine in that final sector. So I think Williams, I think they've got a very good chance of getting Albon into the top 10 in qualifying. And with the grid penalty situation, Alex Albon is, like Spa, probably going to start the race in 7th or 8th or maybe even 6th place. So watch out for Alexander Albon in the Williams. He could do something quite special in that car. But yeah, I'd say Williams are probably the 6th best team overall for this track, and I think we'll see that tomorrow. Alfa Romeo looking decent. Maybe not as quick in Sector 2 as they should be, but in Sector 1 and Sector 3 looking pretty good. AlphaTauri need to improve a lot in the first sector. Maybe that's because they're saving on power, I'm not sure. But yeah, Sector 1, quite a poor sector for AlphaTauri, where they should be probably a couple tenths of a second quicker than they actually were. And then Aston Martin, really poor in all of the sectors. Again, Sector 2, I don't know why they're so poor. They should be at least a 10th and a half, maybe even 2 tenths quicker in that middle sector. And for Haas F1, they are, according to the all of the sectors and the ideal lap, they are the slowest team from practice 2. So, still, Haas F1 not really that quick after their big upgrade that they brought at the Hungarian Grand Prix. But guys, let me know in the live chat, how do you think, based off what we've seen in practice 2 and the weekend so far, and with the grid penalty situation, how do you think qualifying will go? Who do you think will qualify in the top 5 in qualifying? Let me know in the live chat. And also let me know, who do you think will start on pole position? Reminder, Max Verstappen has a 5-place penalty, Perez has a 10-place penalty, and Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton have a back-of-the-grid penalty. So really, it's between Leclerc and Russell. Who do you think is going to start on pole? Let me know about that as well. And I will come to you guys in the chat very soon, so don't worry about that. Or don't worry about that. Did I say do worry about that? I'm not sure if I said that. I was just reading a comment, that's why I probably misspoke. Laurie Rastogi said, or asks, do both Alpines have penalties? No, which is good news. Good news for McLaren as well, that they don't have any grid penalties so far this weekend. But yeah, I'll come to you guys in the chat in a couple minutes' time. And then, yeah, before then, though, let me get on to some other bits of news and for build-up, obviously, going into qualifying. So let me just quickly go back to Red Bull Racing. So yeah, Red Bull, as I've been talking about for 2 or 3 months, and it has been heavily rumoured for the last 2 or 3 months, Red Bull were seemingly going to be striking a partnership with Porsche for 2026, and that the deal was going to be Porsche having a 50% stake in the Red Bull team, and it pretty much being, equal standing in the team there. And it seemed that it would, that we would see an announcement with Red Bull and Porsche being together for 2026 onwards in the last couple of months, but it just hasn't happened, the announcement. But then finally, it has been confirmed by Porsche that they will not be entering Formula 1 for 2026. And let's get on to what they had to say right now. So this is what they had to say. Quote, in the course of the last few months, Porsche AG and Red Bull GmbH, not quite sure what that stands for, have held talks on the possibility of Porsche's entry to Formula 1, said a statement from Porsche. The two companies have now jointly come to the conclusion that these talks will no longer be continued. And then it says the two parties were unable to agree terms around the extent of Porsche's integration into the Red Bull team. And then they say, with their statement, Porsche, quote, the premise was always that a partnership would be based on an equal footing, which would include not only an engine partnership, but also the team. This could not be achieved. However, he indicated the manufacturer is leaving the door open to a future move into F1. And then it goes on to say, quote, with the finalised rule changes, the racing series nevertheless remains an attractive environment for Porsche, which will continue to be monitored. Of course, Audi and Porsche are both owned by the VW group. Audi are coming into Formula 1 in 2026. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Porsche. I think they will come into Formula 1. I think if Audi come in and have a good bit of success initially, I think we will see Audi joined by Porsche in Formula 1. And I think Porsche, what they should do is they should aim to have, if they want to have that type of partnership, a 50% partnership with another team, they should aim to find a team that is desperate enough to agree to that deal and that won't really be too against, that type of deal, such as a small team like Sauber. I mean, Sauber are rumored to be partnering up with Audi for 2026. So we'll see what happens with that. One idea that I did put out, though, into the YouTube sphere, I guess you could say, was that obviously Andretti, the Andretti F1 team, has been touted as a possible team for the future. They've been trying to get on the grid for 2024. Doesn't look as though that is going to happen. But what I would do, if I was Michael Andretti, the guy who will be running that team if they do come onto the grid, what I would be doing is striking a deal with Porsche. I know, obviously, what do you call it? I know that with the whole 50% thing, it won't be great in terms of having control over the team itself. But if they want to get themselves on the grid, it would be ideal for them. And it would be probably the quickest way for them to get into Formula 1, because F1, or the people who run F1, Liberty Media and Stefano Domenicali, they are desperate for engine manufacturers who have either not raced in F1 before or haven't for a while. They're desperate because they're making it more road relevant, the power units and the technology in that, and making it more electrified. They're desperate for new engine manufacturers or ones that have raced before in F1 to come into Formula 1 again. So, you know, if Andretti put that offer forward to Formula 1 saying, look, we want to come to Formula 1 for 2026 or 2028, let's say, and we'll be partnering up with Porsche, I don't see how F1 would turn that down. I mean, a big reason why they're turning it down at the minute is because, turning down the Andretti entry for 2024 that's been touted, is because it isn't benefiting Formula 1 in the long term in terms of bringing a new engine manufacturer or something like that. And it is a shame, and it is quite scandalous, actually, that Andretti are not going to be on the grid in a couple years' time, because they should be. They have great racing pedigree. They should be on the Formula 1 grid. There is no doubt about that. But unless it's going to bring a big, proper engine manufacturer or just manufacturer in general name onto the grid, I don't think F1, for the moment, is going to be that interested. And that's pretty much the only new outfits F1 are going to be open to, is, you know, if it's a Porsche team that has a massive stake in, say, the Andretti team. So, yeah, that's what I think Andretti should do to try and get on the grid. But it is sad that Red Bull and Porsche won't be partnering up for 2026. But, yeah, that's the way it is, Dan. It looks as though Red Bull are either going to be bringing Honda back for a full commitment again for 2026, or Red Bull are going to be building their own engine program, which I think Christian Horner did talk about actually at Zandvoort or Spa, that Red Bull are already doing that with a view to, you know, being their own supplier for power units for 2026 onwards, which would be great for the Red Bull team, because then they wouldn't have to worry about engine supply issues in the future. But we'll see what happens with that. Now, another thing we can get on to quick is an onboard lap of the Monza Circuit. And what does it take to have a good lap here at Monza? Well, let's look at the track map quick. This is the Temple of Speed, as they call it. It is the highest speed circuit on the Formula 1 calendar. You're on throttle here, I think, for 82% of the lap, I think it is. I think it's at least 80% of the lap. And you can see, by looking at the map here, it is pretty flat out here at Monza. And with these new cars that can follow very well, I think we'll get a lot of overtaking on Sunday, especially with so many drivers starting towards the rear of the field. But what does it take to have a good lap here? Let's get into the onboard lap. And this is a guy, can't remember his name exactly. I'll try to remember it for tomorrow so I can shout the guy out. But he's in an old, I think, GP2 car, is this guy, as he comes across the start-finish line. Now, past the grid hatchings and now into turn one, where it kind of becomes more of a tunnel towards turn one. A lot tighter it becomes. And then into turn one, he locks up there. You've got to hit really the apex of turn one and turn two. You can't afford to run wide. And also the exit of that corner, very important to not lose traction, because it can ruin your entire run through here up to the second chicane. And then for the second chicane, one thing you can do, a lot more so than the first chicane, is attack the curbs a bit more, and then running wide onto that exit curb is ideal. Running wide as possible, but not going into the gravel. And then with the Lesmos, just, hitting the apex, but also maximizing how much of the exit road you're using is ideal for your lap. And then you come on to the second DRS straight towards the Ascari chicane. Very old piece of the track here. And for the Ascari chicane, really, it's all about the rear end of the car. As long as it keeps in check, you should be able to plant your foot really hard through the middle of the Ascari chicane and through the exit there as well. And now you start to come towards the end of the lap, as this guy's following in the slipstream of another car ahead, and into the Parabolica. really, it's about attacking this corner as hard as possible. You don't necessarily have to absolutely nail the apex of that corner, but just attacking the corner entry as hard as possible is really what gets the time out of that corner. And that is a lap at the Monza Circuit here in Italy. Now, one final thing I am going to get onto before I come onto your comments in the chat is I want to show a clip quickly, because you guys may remember, obviously we had the Dutch Grand Prix last weekend. You may remember at the very end of qualifying we had someone, and also I didn't mention this, did I? I've just remembered because I've just seen apparently Yuki Tsunoda's been given a 3-place grid penalty for not sliding under yellow flags. I just remembered Tsunoda has a 10-place penalty anyway because he's exceeded the amount of allowed reprimands. So yeah, Tsunoda will be starting basically from the back of the grid as well. I'm not sure if I actually said that or if I did. Let me just look. Actually, yeah, I did. Chris Medlin did tweet about it, didn't he? That Tsunoda was one of the people starting at the very back of the field. So yeah, just thought I'd let you know that. But yes, Tsunoda given a further 3 places for speeding under yellow flags. He already has, 8 penalty points, does Tsunoda. Needs to calm down a bit with his, him exceeding the regulations. But, yeah, let me just find this clip quickly. So, yeah, in qualifying at the Dutch Grand Prix last weekend, you'll remember at the very end there was a flare thrown onto the track at turn 1. And obviously, there was one thrown onto the track at the exit of turn 12 in Q2. But the one in Q3, thankfully, did not actually cause a red flag. But I found a clip on social media, and then it did the rounds a bit on social media, of exactly where the flare came from. So let me just keep scrolling through Twitter to find it. Should be able to find it. Let me see if I can find this. I may have to go. I'm looking at Tomo, Tomo F1, the YouTuber. I'm looking at his tweets. The reason is because I'm pretty sure he replied to a tweet about the actual clip. I'm just trying to find it quickly. So let me just try and do that. Make sure to keep your comments coming in the chat, guys. Let me just have a look. I'm pretty sure he was in the replies of the actual clip. Just trying to find it. Still can't find it, which is annoying. Unless it's been deleted, which I'd be annoyed about, because I will really want to show. Here you go. This is it. Actually, let me right, so I'm just going to quickly plug my headphones in so you guys can hear through my end the actual audio from the clip. So let me just get those quick. And what you're going to see in this clip is you're going to see a certain someone throwing the flare deliberately at turn 1. The most interesting thing about this clip is not that it's a person, but the status of the person, which I'll point out in this clip. So just hold on a sec. And let me just quickly play the clip. Sorry if you heard any noise there. And right, let me just get it up on screen. So you can see, let me again pause that quickly. This guy, he's holding a flare that he's obviously grabbed from somewhere at the top of the grandstand because he's walking down here. He's walking down, and you'd think, and again, he's a security guy. You can tell because when he gets closer to the camera, you can see I think an earpiece hanging out or around his neck area. You'd assume the guy's gonna just throw it away. I'll turn the sound down a bit in case it's a bit too loud. Yeah, again, you're gonna assume that he's gonna throw it away. Just watch what this guy does. Yes, you are right in seeing that. He fucking threw it onto the track. And he's a security guard. And by the way, the reason you can tell he's a security guard, you can see here on his shirt, he's got what appears to be some sort of like earpiece hanging down on his top here. You can see on the center of his shirt as well. What's this gesture he does after he throws it? It's such a fucking arrogant fucking gesture. This one. Like, who the fuck does this guy think he is? Honestly, this guy. Let me get it back up again. And get a good close-up. There you go. Just, I don't think I've ever used this word, but I'm going to use it here. This guy is an absolute cunt. I can't even explain how incredibly stupid and wrong this is. A security guard throwing a flare onto the track. Like, does this guy have any brain cells at all? I mean, to be honest, with this look on his face, it doesn't look as though he actually does. But fuck me, this was horrendous to see. I actually, when I saw it the first time, I couldn't actually believe it when I saw it. And you can even see people behind him, like, their mouths open, like, what the fuck have you done? And if I play it on, you can see people down here, looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? And then that guy's the guy who took the video. But what an absolute twat that guy is. And hopefully he is sacked, because not only is that dangerous and wrong, it is like one of the most stupid things I've ever seen this year. And obviously the planet has sunk in terms of intelligence in the last few years in terms of what people do and what's captured on, camera for social media and that. But Jesus fucking Christ, that was bad. Yeah, let me know in the chat, what did you think of that? That was, again, when I saw that, I was absolutely amazed when I saw that could possibly happen. Yeah. That's a good comment by M90 Regal. It says, definition of a beta cuck masquerading as a Sigma. Oh my. But yeah, I'm going to read out your comments now in chat, so let me know what did you think of what I just got into there, and also what I've got into so far in this stream. Just want to say though, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because I will be live tomorrow at 11:45 AM UK time to cover the entirety of qualifying day at Monza. From 11:45 AM UK time until 1 PM, I'll be doing a watch along for practice 3. Then from 1 till 3 PM, I'll be doing build up to qualifying. And then from 3 till 4 PM UK time will be the watch along that I'll be doing for qualifying. And then for about half an hour at least after the session finishes, I'll be doing a reaction to the session itself. And then for race day on Sunday, I'll be live from 12 PM UK time on Sunday for, firstly, until 1:30 PM, build up to the race. Then from 1:30 PM till 4 PM, I'll be doing the race watch along with my co-commentator Niblo. And the race starts, by the way, at 2 PM UK time, just so you guys know. And then for about an hour after the race finishes, I'll be live still to react with you guys to the events of the 2022 Italian Grand Prix. So if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up. And for everyone watching right now, if you have not already, don't forget to smash that like button. And also share this video and channel as well, if you could. Obviously helps the channel grow. Anyway, let's get on to your comments. And then after I get onto your comments, what we're going to do is just go through the rest of the teams. After that, obviously, still got to get into McLaren, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Haas, AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, and Williams. Paul James Scribb says, yo, I've just finished work. How did practice run go earlier? Well, I've basically already covered that. And, well, you would have already seen what I've covered. Also, that's an old comment at the very start of the stream. Good to see you, though, Paul. And good to see everyone in the chat interacting. Warhawk says Leclerc will have a major advantage then without a penalty. In terms of the starting grid, yeah, but I don't think Ferrari will actually convert that into victory. I think, let's say Leclerc starts on pole, Russell second, and Verstappen starts in sixth, and then, you know, you've got Perez, Sainz, Hamilton at the back. What you're probably going to have is Leclerc leading the race for the first 15 laps, and then after that, I think the chances of him leading, even, never mind winning, are pretty low. And I think at this point of the weekend, I'd say Leclerc's probably likely to finish in... I think probably still finish on the podium, but I think at this point, I'd predict him to finish in third for the Italian Grand Prix. M90 Regal, what power unit parts are / were replaced on Verstappen's car? I've heard he has some penalty. Yeah, I think someone else said in the chat, I think it's a new new ICE, Harrison K said. Yeah, I think a new ICE only incurs a 5 place penalty. D'Angelo Williams says, I really sense engine failures for Ferrari. It's been a while since it occurred, but it may be on the cards this weekend since they decided to turn up the engines. It is possible. Alfa Romeo have been having still power unit problems. They had one obviously last weekend. Mick Schumacher in the Ferrari-powered Haas had one in practice too. And yeah, it is likely. And the Grand Prix on Sunday is likely to be hot as well. If I look at the weather quickly for Monza for this weekend, I think it's hot and sunny tomorrow and Sunday as well. Let me just have a quick look. And I have to look, actually, I don't think I'll be able to look at Monza. I'll have to look at Milan, which is not too far away from Monza. So yeah, tomorrow, hot and sunny, no wind at all. Sunday, 28 degrees Celsius. Sunny and light winds, it says. So track temperature will be in the 40s. And yeah, that's definitely prime conditions for a Ferrari engine failure. Saying that, we didn't get one at France, but Leclerc didn't really give us a chance to witness the beauty of one with his crash. How did the trap speeds look today? Red Bull still near the top. I think in practice too, I think they showed the top 3 drivers in the main speed trap, and I think it was Verstappen, Gasly, and Bottas, was it? I can't remember. Verstappen was number 1, and then there was an AlphaTauri, I'm pretty sure, number 2. So yeah, I'm not really surprised at that, Max Verstappen being the quickest in the speed traps. The thing is, though, with the speed trap data, the reason I don't look on a Friday is because some teams do tend to not run as much power as they could, or maybe not as much power as their rival teams are, which is why I never look at them, though, that bit of data from a Friday, because it can be skewed quite a bit. Paul James Squibb says, do the car mechanics try to set up the cars specifically for each track? I mean, yeah, but... yeah, I say yeah, but if the driver's not comfortable, then they have to just go with what the driver, you know, makes him feel comfortable, even if it makes the car less suitable to the circuit layout. For example, if, because obviously at Monza, you want to set your car up with as little downforce as possible, as little wing as possible this weekend. But if certain drivers are struggling with that, then they've got to put more wing on the car, because even if, yes, the potential of the car is quicker with less wing on it, if the driver is, you know, unhappy with the balance of the car and is going off the track all the time, then it's going to end up being slower anyway. So yeah, that's what I would say with that. Hello, by the way, to Polish Eddie. Says, what's up, dude? Hope you're excited for the weekend. By the way, cheers for your comment yesterday saying how great the channel was. I really appreciate that. Sorry I didn't respond to it. I think I did heart the comment. If I haven't, then I'll make sure actually to do so now. But I did see it last night. So, yeah, cheers for that comment. Let me just find it and give it a heart quickly. There you go. Just found it. So, yeah, cheers for that. And let's read some other comments here. M90 Regal asks, you all think Mercedes will dump their zero side pod philosophy for next year? I wasn't the that the only other team to run such a design. Williams switched to a more conventional side pod. I don't think Williams had quite the same side pod, but it definitely wasn't anywhere near close to the side pod design they eventually went with at the British Grand Prix, which is basically a copy of the Red Bull. If I'm Mercedes, I'm copying the Red Bull design, because it's clear that zero side pod design, I don't think it works. And even though maybe it does have the potential at times to work, I don't think ultimately, if they want to be winning a championship, I don't think it's going to work for them. So they need to go in a different direction, in my view. Wonderful says, next year all will be closer, I hope. It should be. I mean, the thing is, with the new set of regulations, obviously in 2009 we had a big new set of regulations and it actually brought the field closer, and that was an anomaly, because normally that doesn't happen. Normally what happens is, with a big new set of regulations, is the field gets strung out, which happened in 2014 with the new engine regs, 2017 with the new aero regs. What other regs would I say? Also the new aero and tyre regs in 1998, when we moved from slick tyres to groove tyres, and they slowed the cars down by fiddling around with the aerodynamics of the car designs as well. That really strung the field out quite a bit, because in 97 we had a really close field and we had so many different winners. I think that year, Ferrari, Williams, Benetton, McLaren. Who else did we have? Did we have Prost as well? There was quite a few teams that definitely contended for a victory that year, and it was a very exciting season. But then in 98, it was McLaren and Ferrari. That's it. So yeah, do give these regulations time. In 2024, 2025, pretty much the end of these regs until we get to the 2026 engine regs, that's when you'll see the field really close up and the racing get to a point where it's incredibly exciting. I think next year you'll probably see the field a tad closer, but not massively closer. I think really, again, 2024 and 2025 is when you'll see the field really close up, and you'll get possibly, podiums in those seasons where a lot of the time it is quite a bit different from race to race. So yeah, do give it a bit of time to really shake things up. And also the cost cap and the new rule about, or the sliding scale aero thing, about how if you finish lower in the championship you get more wind tunnel time. That will start to have an effect, I reckon, probably the end of next season and going into 2024, 2025 as well. So yeah, give it a couple years before we get, the field properly close, because I think it will happen. M90 Regal says the engines are frozen from here on out, so I think it'll tighten up next year. Only big changes will be aero the next few years. It was 2010, there was like 5 drives in the hunt for the championship. The thing is, in 2010, I mean, it was a very exciting season, but Red Bull had by so much the fastest car on the grid that really they should have won that championship pretty easily, but they gifted Ferrari and McLaren that year so many great opportunities that's what made it so close. But I reckon in 2 to 3 years, at the end of these regs before the 2026 regs, I reckon we'll get to a point where we were in, like, say, 2006 or 2008, where you've got 3 main top teams and then probably another team or two that gets, say, 2 or 3 podiums in that season and is occasionally up there fighting with the top teams. I think that's what you'll get in a couple years from now. Kind of like we got in 2021, to be fair, where obviously you had McLaren win a race and had a few podiums, Ferrari had a few podiums, Alpine won a race and had a podium with Alonso. So I think you'll get, I think we'll get back to that point not too long. Paul James Squibbs asks, would you say the mechanics are more important than the drivers over the course of a full season then? No, I wouldn't say that, because even though, it's important they set the car up correctly and, make sure the car is as good as it can be in getting it ready and set up for whatever session, the driver still has to get the performance out of the car. So no, I'd say the driver still. M90 Regal says, my Sunday prediction: Hamilton, Russell, Norris for the top 3, Mercedes podium lockout. Put money on it. That would be quite a thrilling Grand Prix if that was to happen. My prediction at the moment for the race, for my top 5, again, we'll have to see what happens in qualifying, and my prediction will probably change for the race based on what happens in qualifying. But what I'm going to go for is Verstappen to win, Russell second, Leclerc third, and then Hamilton fourth, and then Perez probably fifth. Yeah, I think that's what my top 5 is going to be based on the grid penalty situation. Frank Trigg says Russell pole. Wonderful says Verstappen pole. Paul James Squibb says, I'm quite new to F1, but I'd love to know more about the mechanics. Do they get poached from other teams like football players do? Are there any clearly star mechanics F1 wants? I mean, I think there are certain mechanics that maybe do transfer from certain teams, but I wouldn't say it's quite like football players. I think the engineers, who sit on the pit wall and go through the data, I think they're more in that stratosphere of being poached from other teams and stuff like that. I wouldn't say the mechanics are quite in that sphere, if you know what I mean. M90 Regal, oh yeah, no Porsche, no more. You think Honda might be considering going past 2025? Well, there are rumours that they are considering coming back for 2026, and they're having a look at, what their possible plans would be. I think Honda should come back because Red Bull, by the time we get to 2026, Red Bull are going to have probably 2 or 3 more championships won. So I think if they go back with Red Bull and become a proper full supplier again, then I think they'll be in a great position there, Honda. Vico or Vico says Verstappen, Checo, Leclerc before penalties. I think for my top 3 in qualifying, I think I'm going to go, and again, this is before the penalties are applied, Verstappen, and then Leclerc in second, and then third, probably, I'm going to probably go Perez instead of Sainz. And let's find some other comments here if I can. Wonderful says they need to build extra pit boxes if new teams want in on every circuit. Well, at certain circuits they do, but not every circuit. I mean, a lot of the historical circuits have like 30 or more grid hatchings, because normally, like places like Monza sometimes host races with like 30 or more cars. So yeah, that won't be an issue. Paul James Squibbs, why don't we ever hear that much about mechanics, designers, dramas like we do with the drivers? Who's going to be where next season? Who's considered the best? I mean, there is that talk, but it's just not as interesting as the drivers. It's kind of like, not like in football, but if you're American, you'll understand what I'm saying. in the NBA, the National Basketball Association in America, the players are the stars. I mean, people care about the coaches, but not really. I mean, the casuals when it comes to basketball don't care really at all about the coaches and how the team is, constructed. They care about the players, and that's really how F1 is. It's all about the drivers, really. The teams as well, there's no doubt about that. It is about the teams as well, but the drivers, I would say, are the main stars of Formula 1. Paul James Squibbs, I would love it if Chaz did a full run-through of all the team staff and who he rates highest relative to others regarding all the mechanics, designers, pit stop folks, and strategists. But when it comes to the mechanics and pit stop folks, I don't think they list them as actual, you can't actually see them on their website as, listed employees. I don't think. They only list the, engineers or technical people. So I don't think I'd actually be able to do that, to be honest. Let's look at some other comments here if I can. And then we'll get on to the rest of the teams. Wonderful says, I would have dropped him, but that's just me. M90 Regal says, the way the world is these days, he will get a stern promotion and pay rise. Paul James Squibb says, Herta might have to race an F2 until he has enough points, or do they make exceptions if they think a driver is good enough? Is it the FIA that give up the super licenses? Yeah. The FIA obviously give up the super licenses. It doesn't appear, though, that they are going to give Colton Herta one, because it would have to be them making an exception because he doesn't have enough super license points. Now, I'm not going to get super massively into it because I'm actually going to cover this topic in a bit more depth than I have so already in the build-up to qualifying tomorrow. And I'm also going to record that part of tomorrow's stream and upload it as a video the following week. So I will get into it tomorrow. Don't worry, guys. And my thoughts on it and just how the whole situation is playing out. Hello, by the way, to Chris. It's hello from the States. Wonderful says, great channel, you deserve more subs, buddy, keep it up. Cheers for that. Polish Eddie says, for now you only have 100 people watching your stream, but you're going to grow very quickly. Great work. Thanks for that. Paul James Squibbs saying, also, I find this channel the most interesting by far. Chazza does the best race commentary, but also really informative outside the actual races too. Very comprehensive. And all the helpful, informative people in the chat too. Great channel. Cheers for that. Let me just read out a couple of comments from Josiah, who says, we need 2021 Mercedes back. Ferrari just a disgrace to front-running teams. And hello to Moaz Shahzad, I think it is. If I've mispronounced that, I apologise. Is Vegas still on the list for F1 races next year? Yeah. And yeah, good luck if you're American going to the Las Vegas Grand Prix, because you won't have a bank account after the Grand Prix's finished, put it that way. But I think I'm going to move on with the rest of the teams now. Let me just see if there's anything else. Don't think so. Yeah, I think we'll move on with the rest of the stream. Thanks, guys, for the comments, though. But, keep them coming because I will read out some more towards the end of the stream as well. But let's get into the rest of the teams, and then I'll get to you guys and your comments in chat once again. So we'll now go on to the McLaren team. And once again, just like Zandvoort, it is a tale of two at McLaren, because you've got Daniel Ricciardo absolutely nowhere compared to his teammate, and Lando Norris doing pretty well over a single lap in the McLaren. Lando Norris was 4th in practice 2. Very good lap from him. Came out of nowhere, really. I don't think anyone expected that whatsoever. So, yeah, phenomenal lap there from Lando. And they did bring McLaren, I think, some upgrades at the Belgian Grand Prix for lower downforce tracks to try and cut some drag off. Maybe that is what is helping the McLaren car be a tad quicker in a straight line so far this weekend. But we'll see ultimately in qualifying tomorrow as to, whether they can keep that pace up. But in terms of qualifying tomorrow, Lando Norris, if he gets into the top 10, I think that's a very good job by him, because McLaren, I still don't think ultimately will be that quick in qualifying. To be honest, though, even if he qualifies in P11, he'll probably start the race from 8th or 7th on the grid because of the penalties for some of the drivers throughout the field. So, yeah, Lando, if he can get into the top 10, that would be a superb job by him. Show just how great he is over a single lap. And for Daniel Ricciardo, as long as he can get to Q2, I think that'd be a good enough result, because obviously he'll be brought forward by a few positions on the grid with those grid penalties. So, yeah, not looking too bad for McLaren, but I don't think ultimately they will be as quick as their rival team in qualifying and rival for 4th place in the championship, being Alpine. And yeah, Alpine, pretty good today. They were in the top 10 with both cars, I think, in practice 1 and practice 2. And we know that Alpine don't tend to push that hard on a Friday practice day. So good pace from Alpine, and I think they'll be absolutely fine tomorrow. They'll be the quickest midfield team. And if they have really good straight line speed tomorrow, and for the rest of the weekend, if they can really get up there in terms of numbers with, say, Red Bull with their straight line speed, which we did actually see at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa with Alpine, that they were very quick in the main speed traps. If they could do that again, then even with those faster cars coming through the pack, Alpine could end up getting a very good result on Sunday. Because if they were to qualify, say, 7th and 8th, which I think realistically is where they should qualify for the Grand Prix, or finishing qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday, if, Sainz and Hamilton and Perez and Verstappen ahead of them are taking their penalties, then what do you call it? Then they're going to gain, a lot of positions. I think actually, just thinking about it with Max Verstappen, we'll have to see with the grid when it's published for Sunday. But if Max Verstappen finishes first in qualifying, and then let's say it's, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, Russell, Hamilton, the 5 behind him, because Hamilton, Sainz, Perez are taking penalties, doesn't that mean Max might only start 3rd or 4th? I'm not quite sure, because he'd have to drop back from 1st to 6th, but with those 3 taking a penalty, then maybe he'll be actually higher on the grid. I'm not sure how it works, to be honest. It's quite confusing as to the penalty situation currently in Formula 1, so I don't want to absolutely do my head in as to what the situation is there. But moral of the story is that because of the grid penalty situation, Alpine might actually start the race in like 4th and 5th or 3rd and 4th on the grid. And with their great straight line speed and their decent pace, I've got to say, that might translate into a pretty good race result with them finishing maybe getting one car in the top 5 or one car in the top 6, which would be great for them. Yeah, Alpine are looking pretty good. Again, off track, they've been a bit of a laughing stock as of late, but on the track, they are doing very, very well. Next up for Alfa Romeo, technically their home Grand Prix in terms of the name of the team, but it is still pretty much a Sauber team. And yeah, their pace today looks a bit better than expected, which is surprising because I don't really have them down in my head as a team that is quick at these type of circuits. I thought they would have been quicker really at Zandvoort, but yeah, they've been decently quick today. Valtteri Bottas was in the top 10 in practice 1, and then practice 2 they weren't too bad either. So look out for Alfa Romeo, and most importantly Zhou Guanyu, because obviously Valtteri Bottas has a 15-place grid penalty after his engine failure at Zandvoort last weekend. So yeah, we'll see how Zhou Guanyu does. But I really hope Alfa Romeo can get, with Zhou, a good grid position that's like, I don't know, just inside the top 10, because I have the feeling with Alfa Romeo that even though their pace has dropped off in the last 2 or 3 months, that they've still got good race pace, and if they could just have a good qualifying position, or starting position for the race, I feel as though they could still grab a point or two. Obviously, they are still trying to secure 6th place in the Constructors' Championship. So, yeah, still some important races ahead for the Alfa Romeo team. Next up is Haas F1. Not a good day. Their car is very slow, which is surprising because at the Austrian Grand Prix, a track similar to this one in how high speed and how much of a power track it is, Haas there were very, very quick. But here, so far this weekend, they've been pretty slow, have the Haas F1 team. And Mick Schumacher had some sort of engine problem, engine seizing up in in practice 2 earlier. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there. Maybe hit a curb too hard and it caused some sort of jolt through the system. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, not good at all for Haas. And they're already talking, Good Steiner's been talking, their team principal, about how they're focusing on next year's car. So Haas, I don't think they're really focused on the rest of this Formula 1 season. And by the looks of it, they're not going to be that quick this weekend either. Next up, AlphaTauri. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda will be starting from the back of the grid because he has a back of the grid penalty with all the new parts he stuck on. Plus, about 13 place grid penalty for infringements with driving as well. So, Tsunoda not in the good books at the minute when it comes to his driving, and now has 8 penalty points as well. So really, all their hopes have to be pinned on the man who won this race 2 years ago in the AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly. Yeah, I was surprised that AlphaTauri were so slow in practice 2. Again, if we go back and look at the practice 2 data here, you can see in Sector 1, AlphaTauri were very slow compared to, say, Alfa Romeo, a team that is pretty much around them on pace a lot of the time. 0.2 of a second slower than Alfa Romeo. And then in Sector 3 as well, lacking a bit of speed. So, really in those sectors, Sector 1 and Sector 3, I thought AlphaTauri would be pretty competitive. But that is not the case so far. So maybe they're saving a bit of power for tomorrow. And I do hope that Pierre Gasly has a good qualifying result tomorrow, because he hasn't had one in a while. And I still feel as though Gasly has the potential to get, some of the results in qualifying that he got last year, where he was in the top 10 basically every Grand Prix, it seemed like. So I'm hoping Gasly does have a good session tomorrow, and AlphaTauri do have a more competitive session than they had in practice 2. Next up, we will go to Aston Martin. Yeah, very slow today in all of the sectors, even Sector 2, where they should be a bit stronger. They're lacking a bit of speed compared to their midfield rivals. I'm not massively surprised that they're not too quick, but normally in practice, Aston Martin are a lot quicker compared to what they actually do in the qualifying session itself. So if this is what they're like in practice, it could be a very bad day tomorrow. They could end up on the back row, or not the back row of the grid, because obviously of the grid penalty situation, but they could end up qualifying or finishing in 19th and 20th. That actually could happen today if they don't improve their pace from practice 2 and practice 1 today into practice 3 and qualifying tomorrow. So not looking good at all for the Aston Martin team. The race, I hope, will be a lot better for them. At least they don't have any penalties for this weekend, which should, like it did at Spa, benefit them quite a bit. And finally, we'll go on to the Williams team, and they are looking pretty competitive. 6th quickest team with the ideal lap, it said, on that bit of data that I showed earlier, or just a moment ago. And Alex Albon has been either right on the cusp of the top 10 or just about in the top 10 in the Williams. And the Williams is looking very, very good. So good to see that Williams are not, just strolling around the back of the field. They're a proper midfield team this weekend. And to be honest, even with Nicholas Latifi, I feel as though that, he can get a good result this weekend in the Williams, because he has actually had a couple very good races here in the past as Latifi. He finished 11th in this race in 2020 and 11th in 2021. So you never know, if we get another mental race again like we've had for the last couple of years, Latifi could end up actually grabbing a point this time. How incredible would that be? But yeah, look out for Williams. They are the main team to look at when it comes to who is going to cause a surprise. So yeah, look out for them during the Italian Grand Prix weekend. But I'll go back to these pictures now and read out your final comments in chat, guys, and then I'll come to the end of this stream because I've been live for, what, an hour and a half now, and I've pretty much gone through everything I wanted to. Paul James Squibb says, yeah, I started listening to Chazza last season. It was epic, even for a layperson. Now I'm learning all about nuances involved, tyres, different tracks, different cars, strategies, etc. Well, it's been great to have you. Obviously, so far, it'll be great to have you for the future as well. And hopefully, I will be able to educate you more so as, you go on tuning in to the content of this channel. Let's see if I can find some other comments here. Moez says, if Daniel Ricciardo has struggled at the other seat compared to Lando, what makes everyone think the same won't happen to Oscar? What if Oscar's driving style is like Daniel's? It could happen. It could happen, but I don't think Oscar's style is similar to Daniel. I think Oscar is, because we have to remember that Daniel Ricciardo, he is actually a lot older than people may actually think. Let me just see how old he actually is. Ricciardo is 33 years old. And yeah, he entered F1 in 2011 when he was, 22? I think he was. 22, just about. I think his birthday was just before the British Grand Prix, his first race for the Hispania racing team. And I'd say Ricciardo, the reason I think their driving style will be different is because the generation of drivers these days do tend to have a bit more of an aggressive driving style than the drivers of, say, Daniel Ricciardo's era. I mean, Ricciardo is an aggressive driver, don't get me wrong, but the drivers in Piastri's type of age range is a lot more aggressive. So I don't think it'll be quite the same driving style, to be honest. And I think we are seeing that quite clearly in terms of what I just said there with the younger drivers have more of an aggressive style. Because, I mean, look at Jenson Button, for example. Jenson Button was a very smooth, consistent, but you did feel at times he was a bit conservative in the way he drove the car. Didn't push the car maybe to the absolute limit. And not in terms of like he wasn't pushing and going as quickly as he actually could, but in terms of he wasn't pushing the boundaries maybe as much as other drivers had at the time and do now. So yeah, that type of driver, the Jenson Button, the Alain Prost, those type of drivers, they are definitely a dying breed. That is for sure. And final comment I'll read from Paul James Squibbs. I'm not sure why Ferrari seem to underachieve so much. The car seems good, Leclerc seems good, but there's something definitely amiss in that team. It's, the personnel are just completely incompetent. And when you have the main part of the team being so incompetent, then no matter how good you are, you'll never reach the absolute pinnacle. And one thing I will say is what I've said, I think earlier this season, and I've said for a while, I remember saying even back in 2019, Ferrari may have a front-running car, but if their car was as quick or as good as their operation, Ferrari would be around the back of the field. That is how bad they are as a Formula 1 team. But guys, that is it for this qualifying preview this evening. Thank you guys for coming along. Been great to have you as always. If you are new to the channel, again, don't forget to subscribe for the content coming up tomorrow and Sunday as well, as I'm covering all of qualifying day and all of race day as well. And yeah, for qualifying day, again, I'll be live at 11:45 a.m. UK time, and then till 1 p.m. UK time doing a watch along for practice 3. 1 till 3 p.m. we'll be doing the build up to qualifying, and then 3 till 4 p.m. UK time we'll be doing the qualifying watch along itself. And then for about half an hour at least after the session finishes, I'll be reacting to qualifying. And then on Sunday, I'll be live, going live at 12 p.m. UK time, and then until 1:30 p.m. be doing the race preview / build up to the race. 1:30 p.m. till 4 p.m. UK time. will be the race watch along. The race starts again at 2 p.m. UK time on Sunday. And then for about an hour after the race finishes, I'll be live with a reaction to the events of the 2022 Italian Grand Prix. So make sure to check that out and make sure to subscribe for that content coming up. And again, if you haven't already, before the stream ends, make sure to smash that like button to help the channel grow. And don't forget to share the video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join my Discord server, link below in the description. And make sure to go and check out the latest content on my channel as well. But guys, until qualifying day tomorrow, where I'll be live at 11:45 a.m. UK time to start off the day with practice 3. Until then, guys, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.